Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this video, how do you like that? Making the exact same joke I made when I covered the story initially. We are looking at the case of Gannon and Letecia Stauch. As I just said, this is a case I talked about over 3 years ago, if you can believe that. Wow, I aged terribly. And it only came to a head recently. That was what happened to Gannon Stauch in Colorado in 2020, and the extremely bizarre, batshit, and disturbing actions of his stepmother, Letecia Stauch.
Really hope I get a sincere apology from everyone.
Letecia is a character, I mean, even Disney villains would say she was over the top evil. And the actions of this crazy nutbar only got stranger as the investigation continued, before it finally landed right smack dab where you just know it would. Before we get into it, please subscribe to see new videos every week, every Tuesday, and, well, let's say most Fridays. Not every Friday, because it is a lot for just one guy. But now, let's give it a go. So, to begin, let's take the story from the top. Colorado Springs, right smack dab in the middle of the state, is where this started. In Lorson Ranch on Mandan Drive, in a neighborhood on the very southwestern side of town, surrounded by pretty much nothing at all. In a house there lived Eugene Al Stauch, his wife Letecia Stauch, and their 3 children. 17-year-old Harley Hunt, Letecia's daughter from a previous relationship, the father had since passed away, and 11-year-old Gannon and 8-year-old Lena Stauch, Al's children from a previous relationship. Al shared custody of both Gannon and Lena. Their mother, Landon, she lived in South Carolina. Al and Landon, they'd been married for over 10 years, and they had the 2 kids together, but the relationship started to deteriorate, as it so often does, as you see. So they split up, but they wanted to co-parent their kids. In fact, they'd all initially, like Landon and her new husband, and Al and Letecia, initially they all lived in South Carolina. They had moved to Colorado in 2019 due to Al's work. Now Letecia, upon marrying Al and having her own daughter and then these 2 new kids, wasn't so thrilled to be moving away from her home in South Carolina, and she especially wasn't too thrilled about essentially kind of being a stay-at-home mom for 2 kids that weren't what she viewed as hers. Resentment would start to build up on Letecia Stauch's part. Al and Letecia had married in 2015, and Al himself, he worked in the military. He was working in the Army National Guard full-time and was frequently based around the country, stationed for weeks at a time. Letecia Stauch, she was something else. No shit. Letecia, or just Tisha, or just T, or just words I can't say right now. She'd worked in education for pretty much most of her life in North Carolina and in Colorado as an assistant teacher. At 36 years of age, in 2020, she was going through orientation for an assistant position at Mountain Ridge Middle School. However, in late January, that offer, as they say, was rescinded. This was due to her employers finding a number of inconsistencies in her applications. She'd worked in a number of schools, never really full-time jobs, more, assistants, substitutes, that sort of thing. But she never stayed long. Either she wasn't offered it or she resigned. Her South Carolina teaching license was actually suspended in 2016 after engaging in, quote, unprofessional conduct, willfully neglecting her duty, and failing to comply with the provisions of her contract. And she was out on her ass after that. Now, it's interesting she would work in education and with kids, because she certainly didn't like raising her husband's kids, or at least it was something she was very resentful of. She was like a big ball of resentment. When you take one look at Letecia Stauch, you can kind of just look at her and say, I don't like you. And, I haven't even gotten into what she, did, spoiler alert. The cut of her jib is no bueno, as they say in Spain, or in other countries where they speak Spanish. But she's just a very narcissistic, negative character. Again, I haven't even gotten to what she's gonna do. I mean, she was resentful that she was raising, and I'll use raising in quotations, Eugene Al's kids, Gannon and Lena, and she would Google things about, I guess, the feelings she herself was having. Things like, parenting should be 4 people, not 1. I'm over doing all the work for my stepkids and their mom doesn't help. My husband's ex-wife does nothing for her kids. I wonder if my husband's ex-wife is sending me a Valentine's card since I raise her kids. One day, some people will wish they treated you differently. She obviously was free-falling because those Googles were Tom Petty, but that last one... Let's keep going. By the way, just to note, Landon, the mother, did live in South Carolina and had been through a couple of difficult pregnancies, so you can kind of ease off there. Now, out in her ass wasn't the oddest for Letecia. In fact, she had a small criminal history. Never anything serious, but stuff like communicating threats, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and that was pretty much it. But she would be out in her ass yet again in Colorado on the 24th of January 2020 when she was let go from that position after they found inconsistencies in her employment history. That was just at the time her husband Al Stauch was about to go on his way to Oklahoma to a military base there. And so 3 days after Letecia Stauch was fired, let go, on the 27th of January, Gannon Stauch went missing. That night, Gannon, G-Man, had not returned home after heading out that day to see some friends. That Monday, Letecia Stauch was the one who reported him missing, dialing 911 at 6:55 p.m.
I don't even know if I'm supposed to call emergency or non-emergency. Sorry, I can barely talk, but my son was going to be home at 6 o'clock, and it's almost 7. So, all his friend's house, he said he was going to be at his friend's house, and they said he wasn't there, and the other said he never seen there. What's the thing? And
she said he was supposed to have been home, an hour ago. He wasn't. Allegedly, he had left the home in the afternoon at around 3 p.m. to go visit some friends, and he hadn't been seen since. When he never returned, Letecia called his friends, called around. They had no clue where he was, and so the alarm was raised that dark winter evening. Things moved quickly from there, right? Neighbors, friends, everyone was out quickly in search of the young fella. Tip lines, drones, the news, you name it.
They're traveling east and west along Fontaine. Still no updates as to Gannon's whereabouts, but they are hoping that they find anything that can lead to his recovery and just finding him and finding out what happened to him. As
when you have these cases of these missing kids, everybody's out there. The community rallies around to try and find him. And Gannon, nice young 11-year-old kid, nice, kind young boy. Definitely the kind of person where everybody will do their utmost to try and solve this. Police looked through the Stauch house and spread out from that epicenter. Al, who had left home on the night of the 25th to fly to Oklahoma to a military base, he returned home on the 28th to help find his son. Landon flew in from South Carolina to find her son.
So he was going to go play with his friend, and his dad already told him he could play with his friend. And he didn't come back at 6, so I looked outside and saw it was sleeting, so I said, well, maybe he's waiting on one of us to come get him, So we drive to the neighbor's house, which I'm assuming he's at the neighbor's on the corner's house, and they're like, no, he's not here. So I was like, okay, maybe it's only one other person. So they kept leading us on all this chase of people who it could be. We covered a lot of houses, and at this point, the neighbors all stepped in and kind of went to the houses ourselves. And I'm almost positive he is with someone that he knows, because he searched on his phone, can my parents find me if my iPhone is, or if my phone is off?
And from the get-go, this was not like, the young, happy-go-lucky Gannon. He was a great kid, he was kind, and he was not a troublemaker. He wouldn't run away or whatever for whatever reason. It was just not in his nature, and he lived in such a remote place. Where would he go? Now, there were a few false leads even from the start. False sightings. Oh, I think I've seen him over there. Completely different person. And even when they set up an email, like findgannonstauch.com, they would get tips in emails. They even got some fake ransom emails, if you can believe that shite from there's some sick mother effers out there to do that, in the middle of this huge, just not only is it wasting police time, you're also just proving yourself to be an evil son of a bitch. As always, in the very worst of times, there's always people out there trying to steal your shit. It'd sicken your arse. And speaking of keeping things safe, this whole video is sponsored by Exter, who make the only wallets you'll ever need, because, quite frankly, they rule, so. They're sleek, they're elegant, much like all of you watching, and they're very nice to look at. They sent me the Parliament wallet, which has room for all your needs with environmentally certified premium leather and blocks RFID. That is wireless theft. They don't use wires anymore to steal your stuff, if you can believe that. Also, the aluminum card holder, which is my favorite. It's super slim, super minimalist, and I rarely use cash anymore, so it's super handy. They also sent me a tracker card, which connects to an app on your phone. 3 hours of solar charges, lasts 2 whole months. And also a nice elegant key case, which I enjoy because it stops my keys from, well, cutting my junk up. Extra's stuff, you know, their wallets and their trackers and just the sleek, elegant solutions to the stuff that you have on you every single day is awesome. Once they sent me some of their stuff, old wallet in the bin. And if you use my special link, that is shop.extra.com/thatchapter, you get a whopper 35% off until June 20th. Perfect for Father's Day, which is coming right up. Or simply use code CHAPTER at checkout to get the very same discount. Perfect for Daddy's Day, perfect for me. I mean, I'm not a daddy, but I like to think of myself as a daddy. So you can get me some extra stuff if you want. So once again, check out shop.extra.com/thatchapter and use my code CHAPTER to get the perfect item for the elegant fella in your life, like besides me. Thank you so much to Extra for sponsoring this whole video. Now let's get back to it. Now, early on though, there was some distance between Al, Landon, and Letecia.
How do I describe my G-Man, my Gannon? Gannon's my hero. I love him so much. He's not only my hero, he has multiple people that call him his hero as well.
Such a happy child, and he just brings life to every party. His smile, even today, is keeping us going. His infectious smile brings me joy every time I think about it.
I mean, when Landon flew in to Colorado from South Carolina, Letecia and Harley were supposed to pick her up from the airport and take her, you know, to the search zone, to the house. They never showed up. They just left this mother going out of her mind with worry, abandoned her at the airport. Make your own way. And before Gannon went missing, she was texting Al, who was on his way to Oklahoma. And she was texting him that, well, she felt underappreciated by both Al and Landon. But he was saying when he's back, they can talk through it. She's worse than a child. This 36-year-old woman is caught with the bullshit she's coming out with. But she was also saying that on the 26th of January, which was a Sunday, the day before Gannon went missing, she was texting Al saying that herself, Gannon, and Elena had gone out for a hike, but they had to come back early because she said Gannon had an accident. Like, you know, an accident. And then that evening, on that Sunday evening, again the day before he went missing, he had lit a candle that had caused a small fire and burned some carpet in their home. She then texted Al that Gannon was sick and he wouldn't be in school the day after, the day he was last seen. But apparently she said he was happy enough and fine enough to go out and visit his friends. That was her story, at least. I mean, she has a few though, as you will see. Like, Letecia's story kept evolving. Like, Pokemon ain't got shit on him, which this would evolve. She was telling different stories every other time. For a fact, even when, you know, they were asking her, okay, Gannon went out to visit friends, who did he go and see? I don't know. She couldn't even name his friends or his friends' parents. She still posted on Facebook and such, continually adding information after the fact, covering up more and more as it was coming out. Some new information would come out and she'd be like, oh shit, I just remembered. Oh yeah, that's why that is the way that it is. Specifically, blood was found in the house, to which she said Gannon cut his foot. When a pool of blood was found under his bed, she said he had a nosebleed that day. It must have been a heck of a nosebleed.
If I ever looked up blood out of the sheets, it was nosebleed.
And I figured it might be something.
I didn't ever look up anything about an artery or something unless it went from something else.
I'm doing all the work for my stepkids and their mom doesn't help.
Oh, that bothered me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame
Oh, yes, because I wanted them to be mine. Like,
she even released a video, well, it's really just audio, which she accidentally took, of when she said Gannon spilled the candle, which resulted in the carpet being damaged, which I think was her premeditating this whole ordeal, and she just wanted to prove he was alive at a certain time.
Stating, initially, Scott, I can't lie when the TMZ information...
Gannon, I promise it's the last time I'm going to ask you. I'm just freaked out, okay? Are you sure you didn't do it on purpose? I did it. Okay, we promise. You promise. Pinky promise. Pinky. Okay, all right, so, listen. We're gonna have to sell stuff to fix it, okay? So, we figure out what we gotta sell. We can sell the sofa. We can sell
Whatever, because we got to get it fixed. So, lady, don't be mad at us and kick us out of the house. Okay? You got it? You got it?
I'm just worried about my
Okay, shh. Listen. So tomorrow,
Yeah, the day Gannon went missing, when he went to visit his friends and never returned, things were very, very weird in that house. And it was pretty much just Letecia and Gannon. Harley, she was at work. Lena, the youngest, she was in school. So it was just the two of them. Nobody really knows what happened. But whatever did, wasn't good.
Blood is spurting from an arterial bleed, direct pressure not controlling.
Do what? I didn't look this up.
It's from your phone.
Blood is what?
Spurting from an arterial bleed.
No.
Somebody did from your phone. I don't like my stepson.
No.
I don't like my stepson. Should I get a divorce?
A neighbor's CCTV would show that on the 27th of January, at about 10:30 a.m., Letecia and Gannon walked out of the house. And Gannon walked strange and moved slowly as if he was drugged. They got out of the car and they drove off. It would later be determined they had driven to pet stores. 2 different pet stores. I mean, if he was as sick as she said he was, to the point where he couldn't go to school, but he was fine to go out for like these big long drives to pick up pet shit. They got home at 2:20, and you can't really see Gannon come home, but it's believed he was there. But then, likely as soon as he got in, before Gannon even took off his jacket, something happened. Something really bad. And of course, when Letecia was confronted with all of this, she forgot to tell you another story. Oh yeah, this guy broke in and he sexually assaulted Letecia and kidnapped the kid. Sorry, probably should have mentioned that earlier. Letecia said she had hired someone to fix the burnt carpet. A guy named either Eduardo or Quincy Brown. Quincy Brown was a criminal who just happened to be in the news at the time. Literally, I think Letecia heard the name on the radio. He was a sex offender who was doing the rounds, and she was like, oh, it was him. So regardless of who it was, I mean, she had all these different names for him, but it doesn't really matter because he doesn't exist. She said okay, this is her story, is that she hired somebody to come in and fix the burnt carpet, and instead of fixing the burnt carpet, she said she was raped by him, sexually assaulted her, and then at gunpoint, and then kidnapped Gannon. And then he hit her in the head, knocked her out. She woke up, she didn't know what to do. That's her story.
If Gannon is alive, we have an 11-year-old kid somewhere being held against its will, and you're not telling us. You might as well have done this yourself. That's why I'm saying.
However, when, she was telling the police this, there was no marks on her head, and she refused, like, a sexual assault examination. Which, of course, would have given information enough to find this guy, and she was like, actually, you know what? No. She then said she had to clean up the area where this attack happened on her and on her stepson. So, clean up the area with bleach and other kind of cleaning products, and that's why luminol will detect blood, which it did, but, it might not be visible on the surface, and why everything smells like bleach, which it also did. At this stage, the police were fairly sure she cleaned up where she had murdered Gannon, not where there had been any sort of bullshit abduction. And then Letecia did this interview.
You are?
I am Letecia Stauch, which is Gannon's stepmother.
You've been a part of the investigation since the very first time. You were the last person to see him. Is that right?
Correct.
What did you see when you last saw him?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about anything with the case. I would more so be willing to talk about how the community needs to have faith and continue to work together and not make these false accusations, like the things that have been said that I've disappeared from the community. I haven't been there to help, but there's lots of reasons behind that.
Reasons like death threats, right?
Right. Death threats are one of them. My family's getting lots of death threats. We counted over 20-some death threats already. 2, my husband's ex-wife is living in our home, and of course I'm not coming home to do these things and to help with the family when I was kind of like told I couldn't. And then many other things that happened with the El Paso County Police Department, and in doing the investigation I was told I wasn't compliant. And can I elaborate on that?
Please do.
Yes. So I asked for an attorney during the interview, and I was denied that by them. I was held because they were blocking the door, and I was told I couldn't leave, and that if I would have touched them, they would have probably, said I still wasn't complying, or said I was, trying to run away or something. But during the interview, I asked several times, could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? Could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? I was denied. I was told I couldn't get nothing to drink. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, it was continuously that my constitutional rights were violated. There was comments about Gannon getting pushed off the hike, and there was comments about this, and that's just not true. I took care of Gannon for the last 2 years in our home because his mother didn't want to do it. And I would never, ever hurt this child. And I know there's some questions out there about, okay, so tell me what happens. That's up to the investigations when they end up letting you guys know, but I've cooperated with them. So I'm like, why are you saying Gannon is dead? He is not dead. We are going to find Gannon.
By the way, just fun fact for you. It would turn out that this was Letecia's second take. Oh, okay, no, I can do better. Give me a second.
Am I on camera now?
You are still.
Okay.
After she answered some of their questions, she asked for like a redo. She was thinking, what, I could sell some of those better. After she answered some of their questions, she asked for like a redo. Take two, because what, I could probably sell some of that bit better. Which of those takes was better? I pulled it to Letecia. Like the first time, she said she hopes that when Gannon comes home, she gets a sincere apology from her critics. And there were many, especially her husband, Stauch.
Really hope I get a sincere apology from everyone who has made all those things, especially from my husband.
But then she said, oh no, wait. I kind of sound like a bitch. Let me do that again. So she answered it like this.
We just wanted to add a message to Gannon from my family, is that we love you and miss you, and we hope that you come home soon. And Gannon, I can't wait till you can come home and let everyone know that you're okay. We love you.
But it was after this interview, Letecia and her daughter Harley, in the middle of this huge investigation and search, hundreds of people everywhere trying desperately to find an 11-year-old boy. During all of this, Letecia and her daughter Harley, as I said, they Audi 5000 the fuck out of there. When she left, she continued her bullshit stories over the phone, and she drove with her daughter to Florida, and she would later being March 2nd, be arrested in Myrtle Beach. She was arrested for the murder of Gannon Stauch. That was finally when the judge signed off on the warrant for her. She did not go quietly, by the way, when they were doing the old, at first she attempted to sprint away, and then when I finally did clap the bracelets on her, she was shouting, she was roaring. It was like with the flick of a switch, a different Letecia had emerged. You might even call her Maria, but we'll get to that. And while being extradited, back to Colorado, she certainly made the trip interesting. On March 4th, she attacked the deputy, smacking a can of Monster into his head. Strike!
Stop! She keeps threatening me. Stop! She keeps on threatening me. I have stopped it. She keeps on. She got out of the streets. She keeps on. Threatening me. I will for you. She keeps threatening. Put your arm down. Put your arm down. She keeps threatening me the whole time. Tisha, give me your arm. I will to you. Tisha, give me your arm. I will to you, but not cooperate with me. Cooperate with me. I will with you, but not with her. Cooperate with me. I will with you, not with her.
Like I said, it was like another side of her had just been revealed. A angry, violent side of Letecia. And then, on March 17th, a suitcase was found under a bridge in Pace, Florida. Bridge inspectors with the Department of Transportation saw a suitcase just under the bridge. They opened it and out rolled a small body wrapped in blankets in the fetal position. This was 1,400 miles from Colorado Springs. The body was soon identified as Gannon, and it was determined he had been shot in the jaw, stabbed, and suffered a skull fracture. He had defensive wounds, and he'd been drugged too with painkillers. He had been drugged up before he had been killed, but Gannon was just, this kid was just such a fighter. When he was born premature, he was given a 1 in 10 chance of survival. And even under drugs, he put up a fight with the person that killed him. And even there's a lot of things that are just, that was remarkable in itself, but it was also the fact that he'd even been found at all was remarkable. This bridge that he was found under, there was no water under it. And the bridge was only checked, like it was checked by, people who were making sure the bridge is safe, there's no cracks, that's not going to kill somebody. The bridge was only checked like every 2 years. So if these people checking the bridge, from the Department of Transportation had checked it, just a week or two earlier, Gannon wouldn't be found for another 2 years. He only would have been found recently. And so the murder charge against Letecia, well, she was charged when there was no body, and now there was a body. Letecia in jail, she tried to escape. Authorities were alerted to this because she kept passing notes to, under the next cell door, and they were like, hey, get a load of this. Letecia's plan was to break the window with a broom, and then Letecia had measured herself, and she was fairly confident that she would be able to shimmy through those bars and to freedom. Because that would go so well for her. So when that was revealed, Letecia went with the old, whoa, just remembered, I'm crazy. Saying people were putting stuff in her food, talking to invisible people, and so tests were done, evaluations, and, well, yeah. Now, it was found that Letecia had suffered severe childhood abuse, but, well, it's not exactly a get-out-of-jail-free card, So, what happened? What actually happened, and how did Gannon end up? His body ended up 14 miles away from where he disappeared. Well, it's believed that after they walked into the house together, she murdered him in his room after drugging him. That's probably why they went on this drive together. She was waiting for the drugs to finally kick in. After she killed him, she put his body in a suitcase. And she left that suitcase somewhere unknown, somewhere in town, but it's never been exactly revealed where. Then, on February 1st, when she left Colorado with her daughter Harley, when authorities began zooming in on her, she collected the suitcase, and she drove to Florida with her daughter, with Gannon in the suitcase in the car the entire time. In Florida, they stayed at a motel, and while her daughter was asleep in the motel, she drove, and she dumped the suitcase off a bridge, probably assuming there was water underneath and the suitcase would be washed, into the Atlantic Ocean. Then she went back, and herself and Harley, they went home to South Carolina.
On behalf of Ms. Stauch, she appears in custody.
Okay, thank you. And if you would go ahead and state your name, please.
Okay, Letecia Stauch.
Letecia pleaded not guilty to the charges, and they were going with the insanity defense. She would eventually admit that, yeah, she had killed Gannon, but hold your horses there, buckaroo. It wasn't her. It was her alter ego, Maria Sanchez. They're like two sides of the same coin, and Maria would sometimes come out. Again, this is probably due to, or what she was saying, was due to her severe childhood abuse, and so she had a psychotic crack, and it wasn't her. She's innocent. Well, this is what she said happens, that she had this psychotic crack. She walked into Gannon's room, and she saw a dark figure there, like a monster. And so, knowing she had to protect herself and her family, and she had to protect Gannon, she murdered this dark figure by shooting, stabbing, and destroying the skull. And then she woke up and she was like, whoops. Psychologists would find her full of shit. The trial began in spring of 2023. It went pretty much as you would expect. The defense was weak, to the point of being non-existent. She was found to be very competent. Competent enough to murder a young boy and dispose of his body for a time. Anyway, it took the jury just 7 hours to find her guilty, and within minutes the judge sentenced her twice to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Harley, by the way, her daughter, it's clear she had no involvement whatsoever in the murder. She was another victim of Letecia Stauch's narcissism, and she was given out that people were using her. She was using everybody else. Harley would even testify against her own mother. This is truly the case of being somebody just straight up evil. No two ways about it, at all. She murdered a young boy to, what the prosecution would say, to hurt her husband, Al, because she was so resentful against him for what she felt was being underappreciated. Like she's fucking 14 years old, like she's a child. She felt used, she was jealous, and she wanted to hurt him the only way she knew how, with violence against someone vulnerable. She was resentful, a narcissist. Maybe she didn't intend to kill, but she definitely did sure as shit intend to hurt badly to hurt her husband. None of this shit makes sense to me, and probably doesn't make sense to you too, because it's all just insane. batshit stuff. But I don't think you can try and make it make sense to you. I don't think you can put yourself in their position because it's so just evil. It's like trying to think what an alien would think. Like, this is just so beyond making sense or just being a goddamn human being, really, at the end of the day. Probably, it's repulsive. It's probably not a good idea to put yourself in that position. And you definitely don't want to be in Letecia's position, destroying the lives of everybody around her, and ultimately your own. So, good. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here with me. It means so much to me, as always. Yeah, if you're here, as always, if you're looking for more that chapter, please check out the Patreon, where you can find some exclusive videos and early access to videos and live streams and stuff like that. Check out the That Chapter podcast, where I'm talking about all sorts of crazy and weird stories that I don't get to talk about in the channel. And yeah, that kind of wraps it up. So yeah, I'll see you real soon in the next video, either on Tuesday or on Friday. But until then, as always, please look after each other and yourselves. Because I love you. Mike out.